Coming up, we're going to talk about 10 shots from Star Wars. The first one, that is 1977's A New Hope, that you probably haven't seen or noticed before. These are really important shots. I think we can get a lot out of, we should notice. And so I'm going to play them up here. Top 10 shots from Star Wars that go unnoticed, coming up next. So this video, as a fair warning, assumes that you have seen Star Wars A New Hope from 1977. If you haven't, it's not going to make a ton of sense, although you might get something out of this video. Definitely, though, if you've seen this movie even just once a long time ago, you'll get something out of this video, and certainly people who know this movie well, I think will appreciate this video quite a bit. Let's go with the first shot, and this comes right after the little ship at the beginning of the movie is swallowed by the big Imperial ship. And here you have a cut to R2-D2 and C-3PO trapped. Seems like a simple shot, but they're a little bit more distant from us than they were in the previous shots, and now you see them trapped. In closed form, you have a doorway on either side, and sort of those boxes in the hallway behind them. What does this mean? This is the first shot where we're told they're trapped. Repeatedly in the movie, they are trapped, either having to hide or being cornered. This kind of shot will come up maybe 3 to 4 or 5 more times in the movie. So this shot at the very beginning of the movie prepares us for it, and the theme of obviously the rebels getting trapped, cornered by the Imperials. Number 2, the next shot I have in mind, it comes almost a minute after the previous shot, and here you see C-3PO and R2-D2 run across the hallway. So as the rebels are retreating from the stormtroopers, the two droids are going across the hallway trying to get away from all the blasters. But this is a really interesting shot, because what does it tell us? It tells us our heroes or our bumbling idiots, as it were, are serendipitous. They are extremely lucky not to get hit by these guns and blasters. In fact, as they go through the doorway, there's a blast right after they go through the doorway. This will tell us when they can get away from all kinds of traps and problems. And even though they're fairly limited in mobility, they'll still get out of the way, giving, younger viewers a hint that, hey, these two, you should root for them because they can get away from trouble. The next shot is another R2-D2 C-3PO shot, and Star Wars has a lot of homages to previous movies. One is Lawrence of Arabia, and as these two are in the desert, that's what you get, these sort of lone, lost people, well, robots, in the desert wandering around, not being sure where they are or where to go. But the thing about this is obviously the slapstick between the two of these, sort of Laurel and Hardy-like characters. As I said, bumbling idiots, and one kicks the other. That tells us that these robots, they're almost fully human. Other than the breathing and other things they can't do, they feel human. And to be angry at each other for C-3PO to kick R2-D2, he's showing an emotional range that's not common with robots. And here we're going to have the emotional range of these robots be almost exactly the same as humans, putting us further on the side of the character and enjoying their witty repartee. My number 4 shot is when Luke goes in to eat with his aunt and uncle. One of the very few times we see him, in fact, I think the only time we see him with both characters. And here as he's eating, he's being told he has to stay on for another year, which is going to be greatly disappointing to him because he wants to go out into space to fight for the rebellion or to go be a pilot or something like that. Now, his uncle's in the doorway and blocking his exit, Luke's potential exit through the doorway. That amplifies the very theme I'm talking about. As Luke wants to go through and out and beyond, his uncle is keeping him from that. Luke is also pinned up against that left side of the screen, and this movie uses classical cinema techniques, a lot of the time at least, when a character's on the far left side of the screen, really pinned up against that left side, they are in trouble, they're in dire straits, they're being left out, or even they're evil. That can happen as a meaning, but the left side is not necessarily a very good side. In this movie, especially where Luke's at the moment. He's pinned over there, trapped over there. And later in the movies, you'll see when the movie wants to play up Luke as a hero, it'll put him in the middle, the rightish middle, that sort of thing in the frame. So the far left side is telling you Luke's got big problems with his uncle. Let's go to shot number 5, and it's a POV shot. Actually, Star Wars has quite a few of these. One of them comes from the seats in Luke's speeder as he goes up by himself to see his uncle and aunt's house that's been burned down in a scene that's an homage to the Searchers, and his uncle and aunt have been killed. Well, right as we get up to that, right as Luke pulls up to his home, we get his point of view. Thus, we are Luke, and we get to see things from his eyes. Like, just as he is, he's discovering this site, so too are we. And basically, we get to be Luke in this very particular moment. It adds an emotional depth and a greater, I think, depth of feeling for Luke, for us viewers. I think that's partly why this is here. My number 6 shot comes about a minute after that shot with Luke, just as Luke is losing his home and having to discover that his uncle and aunt are dead, so too is Leia being tortured in the Death Star 1 minute later. So here we see a shot, and this is the closing shot of the scene, in which Leia, very tightly, strictly controlled, they're going to give her a truth serum, they're going to inject her with drugs, and the all-powerful Darth Vader is lording it over her, and you can see that ball, that floating robot ball, with the drugs or the medicine, going to go take her over. And of course, she's totally cornered here. This is probably the most cornered shot of any Rebel shot in the movie. Someone's going to have to rescue this princess. This shot also gives us geography of the scene. Later in the movie, when Luke, Han Solo, and Chewbacca rescue her, we know already where she is. We know where they're going into. This gives us the layout of the cell as well as the hallway. And when the door shuts here on her, she's not escaping from them. And then the foot slams on metal, signifying that boot stamping on the human face forever, as 1984 would say. She's totally dominated by the Empire here and the blackness of it all. So, of course, she's going to have to be rescued as the princess within the fortress. My number 7 shot comes just 1 minute after the previous shot, which is where Luke decides, I'm going to go with ObiWan and go be, well, a Jedi Knight, go into space, fight for the rebellion, and so on. This shot shows us Luke on the right side, very different from when he was with his uncle, and ObiWan on the left side as the hooded wizard. Very simple shot here. It's just a straight up 2 shot, but notice that ObiWan is taller than Luke. I mean, that seems obvious, and yet it means he's more dominant, he's more empowered, he's the teacher, Luke's the student. Later in the movie, Luke will become the one who's powerful, who destroys the Death Star, but for the moment, at this particular moment, Luke is humbling himself and saying, I'm going to be your student. That's shown in this very shot, where he is literally lower than Obi-Wan, who's this cloaked powerful wizard, and the last time we saw him with the cloak on, he was driving the sand people away. So we know that Luke is going to learn a lot about the Force from this particular wizard. My number 8 shot is in the Mos Eisley bar, when Luke is accosted by 2 ruffians who want to harm him, and what does Obi-Wan do but save him, cuts off one guy's arm. I'm actually cheating here because there's 2 shots. Luke is being thrown, we see a guy hiding behind the bar, we see a blaster come out, and then Obi-Wan whips his lightsaber around and I think hits the blaster out of the guy's arm, and then he'll whip it around again to cut the arm off. This seems like a simple action shot, and indeed it is. It's very well done. However, there's thematic material here. In Star Wars, there's the blaster versus the lightsaber question. There's the Force versus the machine question. Should you use the Force, or should you use machines, computers, and so on? As when Luke uses his intuition instead of using the computer to shoot the torpedoes, the photon torpedoes, at the Death Star. The question of blasters versus swords comes up, and obviously the lightsaber is aligned with the Force, whereas the blaster is aligned with the machine. Han Solo later in the movie will tell Obi-Wan, hey, the blaster's better than the lightsaber. This is a classic samurai movie discussion whether swords are better than guns. Here in these very 2 shots, we actually see this in action, that the sword does indeed beat the blaster, that the Force can defeat the ruffians who use blasters. So this is already a setup for what comes later in the movie, when the lightsaber is the better weapon, or the Force is the better thing to use when using weapons. My first 8 shots were from the first half of the movie. Number 9, though, comes pretty late in the movie, about 90 minutes in, and it's after Obi-Wan has been, well, he decides to kill himself, as it were. They escape in the Millennium Falcon from the Death Star, and now Luke and Leia are sulking in the Millennium Falcon. Luke is lamenting that Obi-Wan's dead. He's lost his teacher and his wizard and his new best friend. What's interesting about this shot to me, there's a number of things. One, this is probably the first time we really see the 2 of them together in an intimate way. And of course, the lore of Star Wars is, well, these 2 are, spoiler alert, brother and sister. So it's kind of a touching shot if you think about this special family moment. But another thing, Luke is tapping that chessboard, that holographic chessboard table. And earlier in the movie, as we know, Chewbacca played R2-D2 in that holographic chess match. What was on the chessboard? Remember, the giant monsters fighting each other, 2 monsters doing battle. And of course, that's what was going on with Chewbacca battling R2-D2 in a game. Well, Luke is tapping the table. What's happened? The monster has defeated his friend, the giant Darth Vader guy, who you don't know who he is in this movie. If you've never seen other Star Wars movies, he could just be a robot or something like that, or a giant vampire for all we know. And he's the monster who has defeated Obi-Wan And Luke is lamenting that as he's tapping on the table. And of course, Luke will defeat monsters later in the Star Wars series. So that is really interesting to me, that he's kind of signaling, one, he thinks Darth Vader is the monster who has killed his friend. Two, that he is interested in battling monsters as he will in other movies. My number 10 shot is one I bet nobody has ever really looked at carefully. Well, I'm sure somebody has. There's a lot of Star Wars lovers in the world, but right before the Death Star is blown up, and that's a shot that's really famous and used over and over again in other media, let's say. Right before that famous shot of the Death Star is this shot of Grand Moff Tarkin, the head Imperial dude in this movie, and it's his head in a contemplative position. Behind him is a guy with a board and a little bit of light, obviously, and he's in a metallic world. And the Death Star is this dominant technology, kind of like the atom bomb, that could destroy little people, let's say, obviously all kinds of planets, and the rebels themselves. Well, Grand Moff Tarkin is a symbol of this, like his head, his very head, which contains a brain, is thinking, and it's kind of a thinking power thing. His head and his brain, as he's controlled everything in the movie, including being the head, the more powerful one, over Darth Vader. He's in the thinking man's pose, a contemplative pose. But remember, the movie is about, in part, intuition being the thing that controls the Jedi, or makes the Jedi. Trust your feelings. Remember, ObiWan says. Well, the thinking man's head here is exploded in the next shot when the Death Star, which is right on top of where his head is, explodes. It's as if his head is exploding, as it were. Not just the fact that he's dying, which the shot tells us in the Death Star, but also that the representation of the imperial power and the rationalistic power maybe that it stands for is going to be destroyed by the feeling intuitive types like the Jedi and like Luke and Obi-Wan are. And what I'm saying is simply that the very next shot was the Death Star right on top of his head explodes. So these two shots are to be seen, I think, in conjunction with one another. Now, those are my 10 shots. Obviously, there are hundreds and hundreds more I could have picked from. What are your other favorite shots? What else did you see in these particular shots? There's all kinds of questions. Please let us know in the comments. Thank you. Please subscribe to this channel and have a great day.